Good afternoon. Recording in progress as well. And good evening. I am Ellen from the Global Student Forum Steering Committee, and I am pleased to welcome you to an invigorating side event prepared for you by the Global Student Forum in partnership with the All Africa Students Union, European Students Union, and various other representative groups. The Commission on the Status of Women, hosted by the United Nations, particularly by United Nations Women, is currently falling from the 6th to the 17th of March in New York at the United Nations headquarters. We are very grateful that some of our panelists have joined us from New York, where they have been in attendance at the CSW67 sessions. Representatives of member states, UN entities, and ECOSOC accredited non-governmental organizations or NGOs from all regions of the world are invited to contribute to the session when it comes to CSW67, and it has only grown over time. This year's priority theme is particularly poignant as we follow up from the United Nations Transforming Education Summit held alongside the General Assembly in September 2022. The theme is Innovation and Technological Change in Education in the Digital Age for Achieving Gender Equality and the Empowerment of All Women and Girls. Over the course of this session, you will hear panelists discuss their interpretations of the priority theme concerning women and girls, education, and the digital age. But first up, we have a very short video to show you regarding CSW, and then we will turn over to our Executive Director, Sebastian Berger. So please bear with me while I share my screen and allow us to see a little bit of what behind the scenes looks like at CSW.
CSW is a melting point of ideas.
Is running, thinking, and talking.
CSW is woman, it's youthful, and it is vision.
There's 2 weeks that are dedicated to women and women's issues by the United Nations, which is huge.
Are building global movements, raising awareness, inspiring change. Advocates for gender equality are mobilizing like never before.
This is my first time to participate in the CSW. I think it's super amazing to see all the people coming from across the world, especially youth. So today's event, I was a speaker. It was about child marriages, and I was taking notes in the session because there were like so many information. Everyone here is so passionate to join different sessions, to get information, to empower themselves so they can go back and empower other people in their community.
My day-to-day is attending many side events and official events that discusses the CSW priority theme, but also adds in a lot of other exciting things that women want to talk about. We need big, bold steps, not incremental steps. It is also an opportunity to have lots of discussions in the corridors because as you walk around, you just meet so many people. The CSW is also an important time for civil society to be on the platform as experts and for them to guide and to advise governments on what they expect as the users of the policies that governments decide upon.
Well, I think this is my 5th CSW, but this is my first CSW as a public official. It's very different to be the Minister of Women's Affairs and really look at what we have to do from the government, what are our obligations, what are the opportunities. CSW is a very interesting process where you really bring all the knowledge and the agendas of the different countries to really make women's rights a reality.
This is an opportunity for us to put our agenda on the table and talk about the things that we want and what's affecting people. Today, I'll be part of the group conversation. I'm one of the facilitators, and we're just basically trying to figure out the way forward and the various challenges that we face as young people.
If we don't come together and do this for young people, our children will have the same fate as we're having right now. Nothing is going to change.
It's not only a gathering and learning, but it's also to get together to agree, to have conclusions.
As we live here, you are richer with ideas and new possibilities of what could be done to improve the status of women and girls.
I believe that what we are doing today here will bear fruits, and one day our daughters and granddaughters will not go through what we go.
So there we have it. There is a small taste of what CSW looks like on the ground when you're live. Thank you everyone so much for coming here today. We have simultaneous French, Portuguese and Spanish translations for you if you click the interpretation button below. And please ensure that your microphone is off while we are listening to the presentations of our different speakers. But first and foremost, I would like to invite our Executive Director, Sebastian Berger, to come give his presentation. Before he does so, I will give you a little bit of an intro as to who Sebastian is. In addition to being our Executive Director, Sebastian has previously held the office of Vice President of the GSF Steering Committee. Sebastian has been an active member of the international student movement for years. He currently holds the co-chairmanship of the Education and Academia Stakeholder Group, engaging with the monitoring and review of the Sustainable Development Goals through the annual high-level political forum. Alongside his activism in student politics, he serves as a trustee and as the treasurer of Nobel Peace Laureate Kailash Satyaarthi's 100 Million Foundation, hosting the 100 Million campaign through which he advocates for quality education for all and putting an end to child labour. As the former national spokesperson of the Greens Party student wing in Austria, he has a strong background in environmental justice. Sebastian holds a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Vienna and now has a master's degree in international relations, strategy and security from NUP Cyprus. Sebastian, please do take the digital stage.
Thank you very much, Ellen, for the kind introduction, and thank you also so much for the incredible work you've been doing in the past weeks to coordinate this event and all the panels. So let me start with expressing my gratitude to all participants, but also to all the speakers who have found the time to join us here today for this really important side event to the 67th Commission on the Status of Women. As you've been seeing in the video, the CSW is really a crucial platform to review progress on gender equality and to develop policies and recommendations to address the many challenges women and girls are facing in regards to gender equality, specifically for us, very important, the student unions in education, but also in health when it comes to economic empowerment and violence against women and girls. In 2022, women continue to fight for equal pay and equal opportunities in the workforce. Despite the strides that were made in recent years, women still earn significantly less than men across the board on an average, and are underrepresented in leadership positions, which we also see in academia, which we also see in our own structures in the student movement. And this is a systemic issue that requires continued efforts to address and rectify. In addition to workplace inequalities, women still face countless obstacles related to their reproductive health and the right to bodily autonomy. Access to affordable contraception and safe abortion care remains limited in so many regions of the world, and women are often subjected to harassment and intimidation when seeking these services. And we have unfortunately seen a dramatic regression in this field. If you look at what's happening throughout the last year, for example, in the United States with Roe v. Wade. So gender-based violence remains a significant issue across the globe. Women continue to be at risk of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, both in public and private spaces and in educational spaces. And this is unacceptable and must be addressed through better education and increased resources for victims. As student unions, we have our responsibility in our field to address gender inequalities in and around education. In many parts of the world, girls are still or again denied access to education due to cultural norms, theo-fascist rule of religious extremists, poverty, and lack of infrastructure. So it's critically important to create more inclusive and equitable education systems to ensure that women and girls have equal opportunities to succeed in education and higher education. This also means combating the digital gender divide, exposing unequal access to digital technologies, including the internet, computers, smartphones, and any kind of digital devices between men and women, which has a direct impact on much needed digital skills, which are increasingly essential for economic, social, and political participation. We've seen that a lot in the wake of the pandemic. So it's crucial that we continue to support and empower women in all areas of life. And this means advocating for policies that promote gender equality, supporting women-owned businesses and organizations, and speaking out against gender-based violence and discrimination. The fight for gender equality is ongoing. It's a performative process, and we all have a role to play in creating more just and equitable societies for women and girls and other marginalized genders. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention, and I will give it over to my colleague Alexandra, who is leading our political portfolio and on equality and inclusion. Alex, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, dear friends. Thank you, Sebastian, for your opening remarks and your on-point words. And also from me, a big thank you to you, Ellen, for organizing all of this. Before going into the CSW67 Commission on the Status of Women high-level panel and student regional panel side event, it's a long title, I would like to make a deeper dive of what we do as the Global Students Forum in these matters, as we are identifying common trends and main linkages facing students and students organizations globally as the Equality and Inclusion cluster inside of the Global Students Forum. My name is Alex, and I'm part of this cluster and representing as well the secondary school student unions inside of the Organizing Bureau of European School Student Unions inside of the Global Student Forum, where we say we cannot start to have this conversation in higher education institutions. We have to start from like when the child is born. And I can only repeat of what Sebastian said, especially in times like these, we have to come together and continue the fights for what like feminist, anti-racist, queer and human rights activists before us have accomplished. And we have to continue these fights in times where the right of education for women and girls is damaged. The LGBTIH+ community is under constant attack, and we know that we cannot wait for hundreds of years for this equality to come. We have to fight for it, especially when we know that the effects of the climate crisis are already hitting. The priority theme that has also been mentioned for this year's CSW is innovation and technological change and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. Following TESS, the Transforming Education Summit, this event today is crucial to uphold and empower women and girls and all other oppressed groups from across the world to support their education and learning experiences. I feel so shocked when I hear this number, which is like the reality for so many, knowing that during the pandemic, 118.5 million girls were out of school and 11 million were at risk of dropping out. And despite the widespread embrace of digital technology for distance or remote learning, many women and girls were not provided with like these digital tools they needed to continue their study. So we're engaging ourselves a lot in the field of education in emergencies. As we know, 130 million girls are denied the human right of education across the world, and we know that gender equality is a global issue. As well, we know that women and girls also face higher risks when they are not in education, especially in poorer nations, which can include, but is not limited to, child marriage, human trafficking, modern slavery, gender-based violence, and sexualized abuse. And this is one of many topics we're covering, as we know that, for example, also sexualist violence is daily lived reality. So we are advocating for stopping this sexualized violence inside of education institution and also outside. And other strategic advocacy priorities are LGBT matters, racial justice, class and poverty as barriers to education, including child labor and exploitation of student work. So I have spoke longer than expected, but let's not wait any longer, because I'm so delighted to present you the high-level speakers of today's high-level panel. Thank you in advance for taking the time and for speaking up. First, I want to introduce Anna Dadio from the Global Education Monitoring Report. Anna Cristina Dadio is an economist by background and holds a PhD in quantitative economics, and is from Core and Iris at the Catholic University of Louvain-la-Neuve in Belgium, and another PhD in public economics from the University of Pavia, Italy. She's senior policy analyst in the Global Education Monitoring GEM report team, and at UNESCO, where she leads the thematic work, the peer project, and is the gender focal point. To this position, Anna worked at the OECD for more than 10 years on comprehensive list of issues with a particular emphasis on the role of policies. Before that, Anna was research professor in microeconometrics applied to labor market education issues. She carried out research in several universities and research centers, including the Center for Applied Econometrics, CAEM, University of Copenhagen, the Higher Institute for Labor Studies, HIVA, Catholic University of Leuven, the Department of Economics, University of Aarhus, the Center Operation Research in Econometrics, and Aarhus for the Catholic University of Louvain-la-Neuve. So you have done a lot, and I am very looking forward for what you have to say. The digital floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alexandra, and thanks a lot, Ellen, Sebastian, for having me and the GEM, the Global Education Monitoring Report here. So I hope you can hear me, and I will share my screen for the presentation that will focus on the theme, so innovation and technology for gender equality. Just quickly, as I have a 5-minute statement, we know that girls and women are the greatest population. However, this greatest population is still untapped to advance technology and social innovation to achieve sustainable development. And it's really crucial we invest in their talent. But we know very well that there is a gender digital divide. Globally, women make up 31% of research and development positions in science, with the lowest proportion in Southwest Asia and East Asia and the Pacific, with shares of 19% in Southwest Asia and 24% in East Asia and the Pacific. And women are also and still underrepresented at all levels in the technology sector. And this is particularly so in leadership positions, where they represent only 24% of professionals. Just to say that our next GEM report in 2024-25 will be on leadership. And the reason of these are numerous, but it can be really basic elements. Women are far less likely than men to use internet. They are less likely than men to own a mobile phone and to use mobile data. And many of these divides are entrenched also in gender biases and stereotypical ways of seeing men and women. And we know that the COVID pandemic has exacerbated these trends. The shift to online learning, privileged learners, and widened education inequity, and this has created further disadvantages for women and girls. Gender disparities, and this is fundamental, starts and emerge in school, and these disparities that very often emerge early in school negatively impacts girls and women participation in the development of innovation and technology. And clearly, to fix this, we need what we called gender transformative education. This is really the only way we will manage to empower girls and women to contribute fully to STEM fields. But many areas need focus and addressing. At the very basic level, girls are at disadvantage when it comes to digital adoption, as I just mentioned. They have lower level of access and use of digital technology than boys, and often they are not benefit from digital technology in the same way as boys. Later on, girls are significantly less likely to pursue technology-related studies, even though they are doing at least as well as boys in mathematics and science in the majority of countries. Globally, for instance, in 2018, only 28% of engineering and 30% of computer science graduates were women. And in several countries, girls are notable by their absence in engineering degrees in comparison to men. And confidence is a part of the problem. And this is really something that is key for entering STEM fields, even though girls perform at least as well as boys in mathematics. Boys are more confident, and girls' confidence can be negatively affected by peers, parents, teachers, and school counselors who hold or even propagate gender stereotypes in STEM. And likewise, teaching and learning materials can perpetuate stereotypes in STEM. And for example, only 6% of the characters in the Chilean grade 6 science textbook were female. And low confidence can trickle very quickly into adulthood. Female teachers have been found, for instance, to underestimate their capacity in science and mathematics. In their position acting as a role model for girls, their own confidence level in the subject they teach may affect girls' own feeling of efficacy in these subjects, and then also affect the likelihood girls pursue careers in this field. And at the root of it, there remain many gender disparities in access skills and the quality of education. The wide website, for which you see some diagrams here, shows the influence of gender as well of other facts such as wealth, ethnicity, and location on the education opportunities. If you want to play with this wide website, you can see here the address education-inequalities.org. You can choose your country, your indicator, and see how big these gender gaps are on the website. It shows, for instance, that the poorest girls are twice as likely to be out of school as the national average. In 9 countries, the poorest girls will spend less than 2 years in school on average. Then, to conclude, as it is clear from these very quickly facts, we must invest in the talents of girls and women. Gender transformative education is essential in empowering girls and women to make them contributing fully to STEM fields. And to make the most of the power of gender transformative education, governments and partners need to put gender equality at the heart of education sector plans, budget and policies, and scale up gender transformative STEM and ICT education, increasing ICT access for women and girls, including formal school-based interventions, along with access to clubs, camps, and other informal opportunities to complement and build on school-based approaches. Ensure access to role models and mentors, including in particular women successful in STEM fields, to debunk stereotypes and myths about gender abilities and careers. And most importantly, we need to close the digital divide and develop digital solutions that ensure a full and equal participation of all learners. As we said some years ago with our report on education and inclusion, all means all. And this includes the need to harness the potential of technology for inclusion and avoid over-reliance on only one particular type of technology, closing the gaps in digital access, knowledge, digital skills, and leadership. And to conclude, just quickly, I wanted to say that our next report, the Global Education Monitoring Report 2023 on education and technology, is coming out in July of this year, and will address many of these issues that are at the root of gender inequality for technology and innovation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Anna Dadio, for your strong opening statement. Gender transformative education is key. We need budget, policies, access to informal and formal opportunities for women and girls. I am very looking forward to the next report, and I will also check out the website after the event. Thank you. Second, I want to present the incredibly inspiring activist Anjum Rahman from the Christchurch Call Advisory Network. Anjum Rahman was born in Mahubara in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. Her family moved to New Zealand from Canada in 1972. She was chartered accountant for 30 years, working in the commercial, farming, and not-for-profit sectors. Rahman was a founding member of the New Zealand Islamic Women's Council and the Sharma Ethnic Women's Trust, and established the inclusive collective Tahongo to combat discrimination. Rahman has worked in the area of sexualized violence prevention, both as a volunteer and as a part of government working groups. Rahman was a spokesperson for the Muslim community following the Christchurch mosque shootings in March 2019, in which 51 people were killed. She is now the co-chair of the Christchurch Call Advisory Network and is a member of an independent advisory committee of the Global Internet Forum for Countering Terrorism. Rahman was appointed a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit for Services to Ethnic Communities and Women. Anjum, I'm very looking forward on what you have to say. The floor is yours.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Anjum Rahman toko inguma, no mai haere mai. Kua te mai aho ki te tautoko, te kaupapa o tēnei rā. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on this panel today. I have the privilege of living in Aotearoa, New Zealand, a country with a reasonable standard of living, which is also reasonably safe. However, that isn't the case for everyone. We do have our share of marginalised communities and inequities in the education system, particularly for the Indigenous Māori community and Pacific Island communities. COVID lockdowns, along with resistance to vaccination by a portion of the population, has led to higher truancy rates and more homeschooling. Today, however, I'm speaking to you as a co-chair of the Christchurch Call Advisory Network. The Christchurch Call to Action was developed in response to the white supremacist terrorist attack on 2 mosques in Christchurch, Aotearoa, New Zealand, on 15 March 2019. We are approaching the 4th anniversary, and I would like to acknowledge the victims and their families, as well as victims of violent extremism and terrorism everywhere. We wish healing and peace for you. The Christchurch Call is a series of commitments by governments and tech platforms to reduce the amount of terrorist and violent extremist content online. 54 countries and 14 tech platforms have signed up to these commitments. The Advisory Network is a group of civil society organisations focused on digital rights, human rights, and an open, safe, free, secure, and interoperable internet. Our role is to provide advice to the signatories as well as to advocate for safer online spaces and freedom of expression. Terrorism and violent extremism are contested words with no generally agreed definitions. There have been attempts at definitions and frameworks. There is agreement on the most egregious examples of such content, such as the live-streamed video of the Christchurch attacks or the live stream of the attack in Buffalo, New York, where the perpetrators were justifying violence even as they committed it. Manifestos and other propaganda related to this type of mass murder are often agreed as terrorist and violent extremist content. There is another level of content known as lawful but awful, content that dehumanizes, marginalizes, and attacks communities, creating an environment that makes it acceptable to commit violence against members of that group. Online, we see various communities targeted. In some contexts, it is Muslim communities, in other, transgender people or people of colour. An ideology that targets women is known as incel culture, and we have seen numerous attacks globally on women by those who have been steeped in that culture, for example, Dylan Roof, Elliot Rodgers, and others. What does this have to do with access to education for women and girls? There are a couple of aspects. First of all, hostile online spaces make it harder for women and girls to participate online. It impacts well-being and participation, including participation in education. A report by Amnesty found that across all countries, 61% of women who said they'd experienced online abuse or harassment said they'd experienced lower self-esteem or loss of self-confidence as a result. More than half, 55%, said they had experienced stress, anxiety, or panic attacks after experiencing online abuse or harassment. 63% said they had not been able to sleep well as a result of online abuse or harassment. Well over half, 56%, said online abuse or harassment had meant that they had been unable to concentrate for long periods of time. Online abuse and harassment towards women and girls has been fueled by some violent extremist subcultures online. The second aspect is that women themselves are involved in extreme ideologies. And I'm quoting from an article, women fuel extremists' continued influence by advancing their ideology online and by indoctrinating their families. New technology allows for more sophisticated outreach, directly targeting messages to radicalize and recruit women. It also provides a platform on which female extremists thrive by expanding their recruitment reach and taking on greater operational roles in the virtual sphere, end quote. One thing that is consistent with violent extremist ideologies across the board is a high level of misogyny and restrictions on the rights of women and girls. This impacts their ability to receive an adequate education and to participate at leadership levels. To improve participation of women and girls in education and wider society, there needs to be action taken around online harm caused by violent extremists. Some actions that could be taken in this space are, first, requiring tech platforms to develop and enforce standards. Second, accountability and transparency measures that require tech platforms to provide data to assess whether adequate standards are being adequately enforced. Where they are not, action must be taken, which could include fines or other measures. Thirdly, offline techniques to build social cohesion in communities. How do we bring understanding between communities so they work together, reducing the chances of a particular marginalized community being further scapegoated? And finally, regulatory and legislative measures such as the European Union's Digital Services Act. However, any legislative process must include adequate independent oversight to ensure the state is not suppressing legitimate dissent and allows for criticism and contestability of ideas and expression. If any of the these issues are of interest to you, I recommend that you consider joining the Christchurch Call Advisory Network, and you can find out about us at christchurchcall.network. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your inspiring words. Before logging in, I was already looking forward because I knew that your works and your words touches one's heart. And I can just only summarize: online abuse against women and girls leaves it deep remarks also offline, but we have to be aware that right-wing extremism can infiltrate anyone. So we need an open, free, secure internet, and let's fight misogyny anywhere. We need action. And thank you for everything that you do in the Christchurch Call Advisory Network. And yeah, thank you for standing up. Solidarity. Next, I have the honor to introduce you to my dear friend and also incredibly activist, Rebecca Tsenaye Ngilaluwa from the 100 Million Campaign. Rebecca is a final year law student at the University of Namibia. She is an advocate for children's rights with a special focus on ending child labor and other harmful practices against children. With an early start to leadership, she served as the junior mayor in her town in 2017 from 2019. And in 2022, she served as the president of the Law Council of her university. Currently, Rebecca serves as the national lead of the 100 Million Namibia. As a young woman, Rebecca also believes that it is through international empowerment that women can become powerful beings who can take up space and make impactful change in society. And I see that you are doing this day by day. So Rebecca, I want to give you the digital floor.
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone else that is tuned in. I hope I am audible. My presentation is going to be short. It might touch on other elements that other speakers have touched on before, but that is what I have prepared for the special panel. And for me, really, to be here today is a duty because my piece is not just a representation of girls and women from Namibia or Africa, but from different parts of the world that share similar stories and challenges as those girls and women from my home country and home continent. And it's so important for them that my piece today in this room echoes their sentiments. As 100 million, our call is simple, is that for young people, they should be free, safe, and educated, that we should advocate for the end of child labor, an end to cycles of illiteracy, and a fair share to quality education for all children and young people. And today I zoom in on how the CSW priority theme for this year is a foundation for bridging the gap between girls, women, and technology. For me, the theme innovation and technology change and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls brings to surface three important elements, which are the importance of opening up the world of technology and innovation to women and girls with the aim of achieving gender equality and empowerment. What happens if we don't realize what has been mentioned in A? And lastly, C, how do we then best integrate and bring to life CSW's priority themes into our spaces of youth leadership? Today, we are able to connect and share ideas from different parts of the world because technology has evolved. But then there are still girls and women who are so behind and they're not able to utilize technology and innovation to change their lives and their future. Considering that women for so long have been pushed into a corner and have been deprived of enjoying basic human rights, such as going to school and getting an education, means that even in the new world of technology that we are able to enjoy, we still have girls and women who do not know what a computer is or what it could do for them. Paint these two pictures with me quickly. In a world where we have online banking, there is a woman that is able to handle her finances with much convenience, a woman who's able to grow her money into investment and branch out into business. This unlocks for her not only financial literacy or financial security, but also economic opportunity. Then next to this picture, we have a woman who stores the money she makes from her village market in her home in a can and places it high above her cupboard to ensure that no one steals the money that she makes because it supports her family. Between these two women, there's one that has the world at her fingertips. Then there's one who stands just behind from where the world is. but is still expected to show up in society and thrive in a fourth industrial world. As humanitarians, as leaders and activists in this room, I believe that we are going to be the generation that will not allow the social inequality cycle to continue and be the one to break this cycle. The idea and theory of human rights really is that human rights are universal and indivisible. However, the reality is that access to technology and innovation has opened up more for men and young boys more than it has for women and girls over the past decade, leaving women to play catch up to a human right. This creates a thriving environment where existing inequalities disproportionately excluding women and girls in low-income settings, women migrants, older women, women living and working in rural areas, and those with disabilities. Further, for women who then try to break the barriers and actually enter such a male-dominated industry, they face challenges of toxic online spaces, intimidation, harsh judgment, undermining of their capacities and skills, and new forms of industrial exploitation. Considering that we want to empower and live in a world where women thrive and have the same opportunities as their male counterparts, we have a lot of work to do. With the rapid and radical global expansion of technology, such as artificial intelligence and blockchain, in addition to social media platforms, we need to ensure that all women and girls get to experience these benefits. We need to start in our educational institutions, promoting quality and comprehensive education systems, and most importantly, making sure that both girls and boys attend and finish school. It is important that we advocate and empower women and girls, but if we leave the boy child behind, then again we'll have to pay catch up because we didn't empower equally the boy child. More so, our policies need to have feminist principles of inclusion and intersectionality. Further, our institutions, both private and public, need to create more practical learning opportunities that allow for both women and men to acquire the necessary skills and experience to be at the forefront of digital age. Lastly, we need to do away with the culture of misogyny and pull up our women and girls in the industry of technology and innovation. In doing this, we need to bear in mind that this is not a one-man job. It doesn't end today in this room. It is a collective responsibility for all governments, private sectors, agencies, and civil society organizations, and young people, such as myself and you who's in this room and has the privilege to speak for those that can't speak for themselves. Only then can we bring the CSW priority themes to life, because empowerment will never be empowerment if it's exclusive. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Allow me to leave you with the wise words of a woman who lived by raising and lifting women. And I hope that we could take that example and carry it with ourselves and lift more girls and women, especially in technology and innovation. Each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it possibly and without claiming it, she stands up for all women. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, so much. We have indeed a lot of work to do. We need quality and inclusive education for all children and gender equality now. So what is still sticking to my head, what you said, we are the generation to break the cycle. I hope, Rebecca, you're right. Next, I want to introduce Brighton Kaoma from the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Brighton is a social entrepreneur and a climate innovator. In 2015, he was given the Queen's Young Leaders Award by Queen Elizabeth II for his exemplary leadership. His work in sustainability has been recognized by many world leaders. In 2016, he became the first African to win the global WWF International President's Award. He was named among the outstanding young persons of the world by the Emperor of Japan and Union Chamber International, GCI. Brighton is a Mandela Washington Fellow, Global Youth Ambassador of the Children's Radio Foundation of South Africa, One Young World Ambassador, and an ex-UNICEF Climate Ambassador. He is the current Global Director of the United Nations Development Solutions Network Youth Initiative and holds a Master of Public Administration in Environmental Science and Policy from the Columbia University. Brighton Kaoma, I want to give you the floor.
I have a feeling, Alex, that Brighton is running a little bit late due to a transportation issue. So if you would be able to move on to Midna, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so Medna Saran, it's an honor to introduce you tonight. You're from the Touch of Life Foundation. Medna Saran is a first-year engineering student at the University of Maryland and the co-founder and president of the Touch of Life Foundation. She began her journey 10 years ago at the Kailash Satyarthi orphanages, and since then has wanted to make a difference to help children who have been victims of child labor and human trafficking. She has hosted many bake sales, events, and clothing drives to raise funds and clothes for rescued children. Additionally, she has spoken to congressmen and representatives to amend laws and spread awareness about this cause. She is currently working on the Not My Child campaign for schools to have mandatory annual assemblies for students to notice the signs and inform them about child trafficking and labor. I am so looking forward on what you have to say today. The floor is yours now.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Perfect. All right. So 10 years ago, I visited a Banjara nomadic community in Rajasthan for the first time. There were hundreds of young girls my age cooking and cleaning for 13 hours a day. I asked my parents why they weren't in school, and they told me that by the age of 10, all of these girls came home to work in order to sustain their village, while the boys went out to get a formal education. Later that evening, we walked to the community and asked the girls their thoughts. These young girls had the most powerful voices, and they wanted an education, but they didn't have any resources or technology to help them pursue or amplify their voices. This was my first time with gender inequality. Immediately when we came back to the US, we hosted drives and raised funds for the Banjara girls, and eventually we were able to donate textbooks and iPads to aid their learning. Other organizations joined in too, and now all of these girls have a proper education until 12th grade, and many have now become motivational speakers to talk about their injustices in their community, and many of them are also talking on the world stage. Although we may have helped this community, there are still millions of girls worldwide without access to a proper education, and many who are still facing discrimination in the technological fields. And as an engineering student myself, I have firsthand experience with gender discrimination, and we need to put an end to it immediately. It is also important to note that providing access to technology and education for girls can have a significant impact on their lives and in their communities. When girls are educated and have access to technology, they're better equipped to participate in the workforce, contribute to their families and communities' economic well-being, and promote gender equality. Additionally, education and technology can help break down gender stereotypes and empower girls to make informed choices about their lives and careers. Technology shapes the world we live in today, transforms the way we live, work, and communicate, yet women are vastly underrepresented in this field. According to a recent study, women account for only 24% of the global tech workforce. Let that sink in. This is not only a problem of representation, it is also a problem of innovation. Technology is driving much of the world's progress and growth, and yet we cannot afford to have half of our population excluded from it. Women bring unique perspectives, experiences, and skills to the table, and we need their contributions to drive innovation and creativity in the tech industry. Therefore, it is crucial to continue advocating for and investing in girls' education and technology, both at the community and policy levels. Governments, organizations, and individuals all have a role to play in ensuring that girls have access to education and technology, and that they are empowered to pursue their goals and aspirations. By doing so, we can help create a more equitable and just world for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your intervention. And yeah, let's end discrimination, gender discrimination now. I think that I will give the floor now to Ellen, if I'm not mistaken. Or Brighton, are you here?
Hi, Alexandra, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And I already have had like an incredible introduction about your work that you have been doing. So I would give you the floor just now to present your thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm very excited and very pleased to have the privilege of joining all of the incredible people that have joined today's conversation. I think it's extremely important that we've decided to share our thoughts, our experiences, and most importantly, reflect on the integral and fundamental role that women play, not only in our societies, but also in building a generation of ethical leaders. I'm coming in from the experience of leading the UNSDSN Youth, which is a global network of young leaders created initially by the then Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to mobilize, educate, and accelerate youth solutions for the Sustainable Development Goals. And we are doing this work through education, innovation, as well as mobilizing large-scale events like the Vatican Youth Symposium, which we host annually in the Vatican. Our work focuses primarily on establishing pathways that can create opportunities for understanding and action on the Sustainable Development Goals. This is even more fundamental when it comes to placing young people, especially young women, at the center of leadership within the Sustainable Development space. I have the privilege of working with incredible and talented young people, young women that are changing the way we perceive society, while also contributing their experiences and skill sets to advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. Through our work, we also work with students across universities through the SDG Students Program, where we create spaces for dialogue and innovation in universities around the world. I decided to paint this picture to give you a sense of how expansive our work has advanced over the years. We are now in over 140 countries where our programs are creating spaces for intergenerational dialogue and spaces for sustainable development advancement at local level. I think today is a critical day as we reflect on what are some of the opportunities and what are some of the levers that we can touch in order for us to advance access to girls' opportunities and women's opportunities in spaces of leadership and spaces of sustainable development. We've heard about the gap that exists in terms of the gender poverty and how women are disproportionately affected by, in most cases, a lack of opportunities in STEM fields, a lack of opportunities in technology. I think we are also very lucky to be here today and have access to all these digital tools. As I'm also thinking about the many young people, specifically young women and girls, who do not have access to digital opportunities like we do today to even attend an event like this. So I'd like to reflect on those, and I'd like for you to invite you to reflect on those and think about what's the fundamental role that you have to play in order to transform the life of the other person. You don't have to be big to create change, and neither should you be big to start. I think change begins by even identifying one person that you can help, one girl in a community, even from across the world, from where you live, can be impacted by your work, by your one act of generosity and one act of support can transform the lives of others. I would like to also think about the fundamental role that young women and girls play in terms of advancing sustainable development. I think we would be doing ourselves a huge injustice if we decided to leave behind the greatest demographic in advancing the SDGs, which is the young women and girls that represent the greatest population in the world. If we can empower them with the skills and the opportunities and create a sustainable partnership with this constituency, we would be creating a long-lasting pathway to promoting peace, promoting prosperity, and promoting sustainable development. We are now at a very critical juncture, ladies and gentlemen, when we only have a few years before 2030, when the Sustainable Development Goals come to an expiry. So it's up to us to think about those initiatives that we are running, be it in our universities, be it in our organizations, and reflect on how we can create allyships and synergies. These allyships and synergies might mean creating joint events. It might mean creating exchange programs. It might mean fundraising and mobilizing resources to support that one young girl in a community that needs our support the most. It's through these networks that can allow us to create impact at scale and create change at scale. This year itself, we'll be looking at the high-level political forum, which is happening in the summer, to reflect and take stock of how far we've come in terms of advancing the SDGs. And we see that we keep progressing on goals that address gender equality and the inclusion of young women and girls. But young people are showing leadership in this process. I believe many of us in this discussion today run organizations, run enterprises, and it's through those enterprises that we can create change. We can call truth to power and create societies that are inclusive. I want to congratulate you and congratulate all the organizers, and also thank you for showing up today. I wish you nothing but the very best, and I wish to recommend that you can continue collaborating, co-creating, and cooperating to advance gender equality. Thank you, and back to the moderator.
Thank you, Brighton. I also wish you only the very best. What sticks to my head is that we only have a few years until 2030, and we have to stand in solidarity and we have to collaborate. Thank you very much. I hope that you agree with me that this has been a very strong, high-level panel. Thank you for everyone who took the time and joined. And now I want to give over to Ellen to explain the regional breakout room.
Thank you kindly to all of our high-level panelists. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you present. And now we move on to our regional groups. My apologies, we are running a little bit behind time, but that is okay. I'm just going to quickly share my screen for a second so that you can see what our next session is. Bear with me a moment. And I'm also going to put into the chat, we are now running 2 sessions. In the main room that you're in at the moment will be the Asia Pacific session. And in the link that has just been sent to you, this is the LATAM session for Latin America. So if you are wanting to view the Latin America session, including Bianca, our translator for the Latin American session, please head over to the link now. All you need to do is click it and move over there and you are all good to go, and we can let you enter that room. If you are looking for the Asia Pacific event, please stay in this main room. The Asia Pacific event will be held in English. The Latin American panel will be held in Portuguese and Spanish. We will just give you a brief period of about 5 minutes to be able to transfer across to whichever panel it is that you're wanting to be on. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you shortly. Stay in whichever room you would like to be in. Thank you. Also, just a gentle reminder, asking everyone to please keep their microphones off.
And thank you, Ellen. And leadership is also one of the many sort of things that I am really passionate about, because it's coming from Papua New Guinea. I like many, thank you, Sebastian. I like many countries in the Asia Pacific region, women are also underrepresented in leadership, many leadership roles. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our first panel speaker, and that is Tangi Harekadina from the New Zealand Union of Student Association. Tangi Haere is the National Co-Vice President for the New Zealand Union of Student Association and was the 2021 Vice President of the National Disabled Student Association. They have been actively involved in student representation roles in the ITP spaces prior to the ITP Summit NZUSA held in 2021. Tangi has also played a central role in the education, which is the pastoral care of tertiary and international learners, code of practice in 2021 with the Ministry of Education. They have been a youth representative at Youth Law and have partnered with the YMCA, in addition to being a speaker for the recent UNESCO Global Education Monitoring Report Asia Pacific launch, and 2020 Country Ambassador for Aotearoa New Zealand in Unite 2030. Tangi holds a certificate in horticulture, amenity, certificate in health, and a certificate in carving from various institutions across Aotearoa New Zealand. Multifaceted. All right, I'll move on to your question, Tangi, and that is, as a representative from intersectional activist movements for gender rights, gender justice, and gender fluidity from an Indigenous and disabled lens, how do you encourage that technology can help us less advantaged communities in Aotearoa New Zealand? The digital floor is yours, Tangi. Cheers.
Kia ora, ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia Anjum Brahman, mō tō mihi ki ngā tangata whenua Aotearoa. Thank you, Minnie, and kia ora to everyone. There's been an incredible set of speakers before me to follow up, and I'm sure there'll be some great ones after me. It's really cool to be able to be in this space. My name is Tangi Haere. I'm the 7th generation to be gifted that name. I love and acknowledge my ancestors, the women who have carried generations of people before me and who will continue to carry many generations to come. I would also like to acknowledge the privilege I have of speaking here and having resources to be able to even attend events like this. And for that question, Indigenous groups from Aotearoa New Zealand have always been led by women. They are traditionally matriarchal and have been guided by women, have empowered and encouraged women. And these Indigenous groups are also groups who have historically sought out new innovation and technology and integrated a lot of that technology into their cultural practice. We've been successful for thousands of years before colonization and the strategic disempowerment of women. Disabled people have also been seen as leaders within our communities, and we've seen the experience of disabled people as a guideline for inclusion and ensuring all opportunities are accessible by default. In modern times, technology allows us to find people who are safe to have tough discussions with. It allows us to talk about things that we may not be able to talk about in our local communities due to discrimination or lack of organizational structures, and they allow us to feel empowered, heard, and safe. Safety is probably the most important part of this, ensuring that women do feel truly empowered and other minority groups also feel the ability that they can speak up. It allows us to understand how we've been disadvantaged, and it also gives us a chance to share vital information in language about physical health care, mental health care, education, and community care. The best way to give girls confidence is to start young, to teach their communities what gender inequality is, to give them opportunities to interact with women in powerful positions, and to meet people where they're at. We can't expect people to understand super high level information immediately. We need to be going to communities and using people within those communities, empowering them to be able to speak to their own communities. It's the most effective way a lot of our tribes have found to engage with government, is to bring our own with us and engage on our level. Supporting Indigenous groups who are seeking connection to internet and desperately searching for funding to buy computers and smartphones is probably the most clear way to see direct change. Whenever you see an Indigenous group trying to seek funding, help them if you can. The levels of literacy and numeracy are not very high in some of these groups. I believe it was the East Coast of New Zealand only had a 68% pass rate for level 1 NCEA, which is like one of our lower levels of qualification that you get during high school. So I believe that is 14, 15 years old. And that 68% passing rate is often with more affluent communities as well. And the east coast of New Zealand, has not been able to rise above that for quite a few years. Even with intense amounts of funding, it still goes to more affluent communities. So making sure that Indigenous communities are at the forefront of new funding and educational opportunities is key. Because what's good for disabled women, queer women, Indigenous and Black women, transgender women, old and young women is good for everyone. We help one disadvantaged group and we help all of them. I have a quote from one of the most powerful women I know and my flatmate, Latavia Tuolasa Tautai. She said in her speech when she was accepting the Prime Minister's Innovation Award, I am not self-made, I am community-made. And I absolutely stand by that. If we do not support people's communities, we cannot support them. No one does this alone. No matter how much people might think that they do it alone, no one does this alone. And on that note, I'd like to share a whakatauki with you all. A whakatauki embodies values, wisdom, wit, and common sense of the people of this land, the tangata whenua. And it is me aro koe ki te hā of hine ahone. And that means pay heed to the dignity of women. Yeah, thank you.
Kia ora, Tangihare. That was, yeah, what a strong way to start. Thank you for sharing. Some of the themes that came through were, you know, how the women and disabled were always, you know, wahine tours, they had access to these things, pre-colonization. And then there was also what you mentioned about safety is most important within our minority groups. You know, it's important for girls and women to feel safe and to speak up. In that way they can speak up, and to also meet people where they are, which is very important as well. Yeah, and beautiful quote, by the way, I am community made. Such an amazing quote. Thank you for sharing, Tangihare. Awesome. We will now move on to our next speaker, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to Ms. Gloria On, who is a gender justice activist. Gloria On is a 22-year-old gender justice activist in Papua New Guinea, working in partnership with the Commonwealth Students Association. She was part of the Student Representative Council in 2021 at the University of Papua New Guinea. She advocates on the gender-based violence and gender equality in PNG. She's also a fourth-year law student at the University of Papua New Guinea this year. And Gloria, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Minnie.
Sorry,
can you hear me?
My apologies. I will just share your question. Okay. My apologies. Yes, you're loud and clear. Now, Gloria's question is, girls in Papua New Guinea are often challenged in terms of access to digital tools and resources such as hardware and the internet. How do you think that equity can be achieved for island communities to aid girls in education and avoid gender-based violence? Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Minnie. So before I get into that, I just want to lay out barriers to gender equality and gender-based violence in Papua New Guinea. Because the country is a patrilineal society. So one of the barriers to gender equality and gender-based violence is culture and customs, misinformation of what gender-based violence is, what gender equality is. It's a cycle of individuals not understanding what it truly means, and our collective effort can break the chain and educate the younger generation. It also stands as a barrier to access to education, unemployment rates, strong emphasis on gender-based violence, poor implementation and coordination in the country. Even the country has passed legislations, provisions under the Constitution, there is less implementation and coordination of these laws. Lack of proper statistics to cover for both the rural and urban areas to bring services in terms of digital infrastructure. So how does
digital tools and resources help both genders in education and to avoid gender inequality. The country is a geographical country, which means the rural and urban sectors are separated in terms of road access, educational benefits, and advances in technology, health, and government operations. This poses as a barrier in terms of uniform access to all women and girls in the country. Thus, women and young girls in the rural areas are held back in terms of progress in innovation and digital technology. This limits them to thrive fully as a human being in education and other aspects of life. The digital resource and tools exposes women and young girls to be educated and to be able to be financially independent. Most men in these societies are breadwinners, and in these patrilineal societies that exist, this adds on to their rights as young women and girls, their rights being suppressed. Their voice not being heard in a respectable manner, mental abuse and limitation of skills and opportunities that are available to them. With the help of these resources and things that are available to them in terms of digital inclusiveness, education, these women can strive in their communities. These mechanisms aid understanding of the topic, learning to both genders to understand that women and young girls should have access to the same opportunities as the ones that are available to men. How the tools and resources contribute towards avoiding gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is happening both online and offline, and it's growing at a very high rate. Cybercrimes are increasing at a rate that is higher than prevention rates. Privacy acts and defamation of characters online due to private information that is being said to the public by fake accounts and pages that cannot be tracked back. With the resources that may be available, both genders can be educated on the rights and what these rights are. As a woman, it is very important to be able to finance yourself and contribute to family obligations, etc. Gender-based violence can be avoided if both genders work together against it. Access to digital resources and internet accessibility. In the rural areas, money is used based on its relevancy in buying food to household goods, to paying for fees and etc. So their accessibility to these digital resources entirely depends on whether they find it significant or not to have that in a household. So another way that they can be digital resources and internet can be accessed to this, especially the rural areas, is through government intervention as public services as well. So girls and women struggle in Papua New Guinea to afford technology and internet access, mostly in the rural parts. As inflation is high in the country, the expense of affording a digital product to paying for data is as expensive as it is. In addition, stereotypes are on technology being for boys and fear of being discriminated against limits girls to use technological tools and also digital tools in rural areas of PNG. Moreover, digital literacy has become almost as important as traditional literacy. One of the recommendations that I have noted down is that the government intervenes and as well as organizations work together to be able to bring digital education to both rural and areas to make sure that girls and women as well, but most importantly to educate men and women on gender equality, gender-based violence, and to be able to expose these young girls and women to their human rights and their rights as individuals under the country and the laws in the country. All right, thank you. Thank you, Minnie. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Tomas, Gloria. It's been a privilege. I just want to say I'm also from PNG, and seeing a fellow countrywoman present on such a global level is not only amazing, but just more inspiring. So thank you, Gloria, for your time. Some of the themes that came through, the first thing that you mentioned was collective effort, and that's right. You know, you ended it well by saying it requires government interventions and also partnerships with, you know, the public service and other organizations as well. So amazing work. Thank you for the work you do for our people back home. And yeah, more solidarity, you, sister, and thank you so much for being here. Amazing, awesome. So now we will move on to our third presenter, whom I have the pleasure of introducing, is Abena Dove. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that well. From City 1000 Youth Action International. Abena Dove is a passionate activist for female leadership and social change. Abena is the current international coordinator and Australian director for City 2000 Youth Action International, which is located in Tema, Ghana. There, Abena focuses on sustainable development projects connecting women, climate, and youth engagement. Prior to this, she was a social change designer and community at the Red Cross Australia and the former student president and CEO of the RMIT University Student Union. Having held, okay, sorry, cool. I just lost where I am. Sorry, apologies. Prior to this, she was a social change designer and community at the Red Cross Australia and the former student president of RMIT University Student Union, having held several local student representative roles. Wow. Currently, Abena is working on a project to increase cross-sectionality between civil society organizations and young people across the world, focusing on temporary topics. I just have and Abena is talking to us from New York, where she's currently at the CSW67. Awesome, amazing. Welcome, Abena.
Thank you very much.
Awesome, and I will just introduce your question to the audience. Women in digital industries and education leadership continue to be at a lesser level than their male colleagues. Globally, the proportion for women in tertiary education leadership increased from 39.2% in 2001 to 43.1% in 2019. How do we foster better female leadership in higher education and various industries to uphold and empower women and girls? Abena,
thank you very much for your question, and thank you very much for the introduction. I have a two-pronged response that largely talks about women in leadership and relates to how that affects women in higher education and tech. So I'll start off there. I'll speak from my own perspective on my own involvement in student politics. I was the first female president of my student union in 8 years, and when I was elected to the council, there were only 15% women on the board, and by the time I finished my presidency, there were over 50% women, so I have a lot of opinions on the inclusion of women in positions of leadership. As of January 1st, 2023, there are only 31 countries that have women as their head of state or head of governments, and women represent only 22.8% of the leaders of cabinets and ministries. At this rate, gender equality will not be realized for high positions of power until 130 years from now, if we continue going at the rate that we're going right now. And this isn't because we're not good leaders as women. Actually, the data agrees that we're actually wonderful leaders. There was a study that was conducted into the results in a COVID context, and countries that had women as leaders had lower rates of cases and death. There was a similar study conducted in the US that showed that in states, the states that had governors, women as governors, had lower rates of death also. The Harvard Business Review uses their 360 leadership measurement tool, which is essentially 200 questions that get sent out to people who work under particular leaders, measuring positively or negatively how they feel about the leaders and the overall efficacy of their leadership. Women consistently scored higher in this metric, and they continued to have they made a further study during COVID that actually widened the gap of the support for women as leaders in these spaces, which showed that only in the 19 metrics, there was only one in which men scored more positively than women, and in 13 out of 19 of the metrics, women scored significantly higher. So I say this all to say that the data agrees with us in reality, that we are in fact capable leaders, and that's not the reason that we're not in these positions. Unfortunately, women are often presented with extremely hostile environments when they attain towards leadership. I think it's fair to say that in these spaces, female friendships are actively discouraged. And unfortunately, a lot of women pull the ladder up from behind them. I feel like for a myriad of reasons, but in part for self-preservation, as to not annoy their male colleagues further by trying to increase the participation of other women when they've already fought a battle to get to that position themselves. I personally, when I was involved in student politics, I was campaigned against by one boys club member to another, who had communicated that if I were elected, I would turn the student union into a bunch of gays and women. And to their credit, I did. But it's peculiar what happens in a meritocracy if you don't actively exclude women and LGBTQ people and create environments that are hostile and uncomfortable for them. And so that's the outcome. Hold on one second, I've lost my place. Okay, so that cannot be relied upon. I believe in cultural change, I practice cultural change, but for the aforementioned reasons, it cannot and it's unacceptable for it to fall to the feet of individual women in positions of power to undo lifetimes of systemic oppression. We need to institutionalize and systemize and formalize the opportunities that men are offered as a matter of course. It has been proven time and time again that quotas are the most effective way to increase women's participation in leadership. We need quotas at every level of leadership, but we also need intentional engagement of women for leadership that is pragmatic. We need formalized mentorship programs, institutionalized career planning, and the intentional recruitment of women. And yes, cultural change is really important, environments that support women and genuine pathways to address gendered issues in the workplace, but we need more aggressive action on those tangible outcomes in tandem with cultural change, because individually it will never be enough, especially in regards to the very strict implementation of quotas, because I feel like very often quotas are discussed, but they're not actually actively implemented. And that is my perspective on increasing the participation of women in leadership. I think all of those things are relevant to women in higher education leadership and in tech spaces. Also, I was told I was allowed to say this. I have I'm launching a social commentary YouTube channel. So if you liked my opinions or want to hear me talk anymore, there should be a link for you to subscribe to the YouTube channel or to follow me on Instagram for updates. And when I return to Australia, that's the first thing I'll be doing. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you, Abena. Wow, there were so many amazing points there. And I'm sure, please, apologies if I've missed out some, but some words were, you know, really big, institutionalized, systemized, and formalized. That's just, well, yeah, that's the way we go, you know. And thank you for presenting the data at the beginning. I think, you know, data does not lie. It agrees. And what you mentioned about, it agrees that we are in fact very much capable girls and women. So yeah, thank you, Abena, for the amazing work that you do, and more solidarity to you, and yeah, keep up the amazing work. Please also, there's in the chat there, and what Abena mentioned about her YouTube channel as well. Yeah, you're a powerhouse, Abena. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much.
Appreciate it. Awesome. So we will now move on to our next speaker, and is Sudhakar not here? All right, we'll move on to Diksha Gupta, who is from Studio Matrix. Now, Diksha Gupta is a passionate young woman and aspiring diplomat. She is a national executive member at Studio Matrix, a nonprofit all India organization focusing on student empowerment. Diksha is also the team lead for the AI Youth Council India, that connects with different universities and colleges to set up India's chapter of World Economic Forum regarding responsible AI policy. Diksha is also a current intern for the Indian G20 Youth Council delegation and is currently studying a Bachelor of Arts in Economics at Delhi University. Now, Diksha's question is, in India, women and girls are less likely to have hardware or access than boys and women. This impacts what types of subjects girls consider are available to them. What would you encourage schoolgirls in India to do when considering taking STEM subjects? Thank you, Diksha, and the floor is open to you. Cheers.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. A warm and heartfelt hello and namaste to all my fellow panelists, participants, and the esteemed organizers. It is indeed a pleasure to voice my opinions and listen to such diversely amazing people on such an important topic from the nook and corner of the world. First, I would like to present the case of women in education, especially in India. In India, the number of women going to colleges is growing in large numbers, where about 12 million young women are enrolled in undergraduate schools. According to data from 2013, around 6 lakh women were enrolled in diploma courses. Every year, the percentage of girls clearing the board exams, that is after the 10th standard, it's greater than that of the boys. And now coming to the main topic, which focuses on the involvement of women in STEM subjects, the participation of girls is generally less. In India, girls prefer to take up nursing, medical sciences, veterinary, humanities, social sciences, and B.Ed degrees. It is because for a long time, there has been a belief that women are ideal as doctors or teachers. But as a young woman, I think that it is a high time to change this picture. There should be more avenues that should be opened for women. The number of women taking up a PhD degree in the STEM field is also lesser, as the median age for marriage of girls in India is 19.2. India faces a deep-seated patriarchal view and the general perception that boys are better at sciences than girls. In the male-dominated academia, women even find it harder to get fellowships and grants for research. According to World Bank data, women make up nearly 43% of the total graduates in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in India. That is one of the highest in the world. But now, adding a grim fact, only 14% of scientists, engineers, and technologists in research development are involved in research development institutions and universities. More often than not, a woman is made to choose between serving her family or pursuing her career, where she is pressurized to choose the former. But as an organization, Studomatrix truly and strongly advocates greater inclusivity and participation of women, especially in STEM subjects. We work for student empowerment, especially in the small cities, so that they can come forward and voice their opinions. From organizing power-packed seminars to promote students, especially girls, to take up STEM subjects, to organizing day tours to premier scientific institutions all across the country to develop a scientific temperament in young minds, Studomatrix is doing its best to cultivate interest in sciences of young brains, especially girls. Recently, we organized some science-related competitions and even partner with IIT Gandhinagar at their annual quiz competition, BrainWiz. As an organization, we think that promoting the less-known female role models will create a growth mindset in young girls related to STEM-based careers. We have identified that most of the girls lose interest in sciences at the age of 15. We are trying to promote model-based learning and breaking the stereotype that sciences, especially mathematics, is difficult for girls. There is nothing difficult for a girl or for a boy. There needs to be a huge change in the individualistic as well as governmental policies throughout the world. As individuals who are privileged to speak and voice our opinions, we should stand for the oppressed women and give them confidence. We ought to bring a positive change in the mindset of our fellow mates. Proper counseling and mentorship at a young age and more incentives to pursue sciences at higher education should be increased. Access to opportunities should be equal to end this equality. Hosting and organizing talk shows related to career guidance regularly should also be done. And we should ensure that equal gender participation is maintained. Providing multitude of opportunities like these to young women to come up and voice their opinions is also very crucial. I stress on partnerships between different segments of society so that there can be positive collaborations to curb the situation at hand. Setting up a self-sustainable network of young women who support each other and mobilize their entire communities to create impact and a ripple effect is very important. Studomatrix is working hard to end the gender biases in every realm, especially their participation in STEM subjects. We believe that it is a collective issue where everyone in the meeting should come forward to fill the gap of underrepresentation of women in not only India or Asia, but in the world at large. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diksha. Again, really strong themes of supporting our girls and women in education. And thank you, Diksha and team at Studio Matrix, also for empowering our girls and women to take up STEM subjects and fighting for gender justice. And also your point with counseling and mentorship, very important, just as our other panelists also echoed with their presentations as well. Thank you, Diksha, and more solidarity to you as well. All right. Now we will move on to our final speaker for tonight, and that is Gulriz Garaman from the Greens Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Gulriz is an Iranian Kiwi refugee who made history as the first ever refugee to be sworn in as an MP, having arrived in Aotearoa as a child asylum seeker. She studied at the University of Oxford, focusing on the legal modes of restoring communities after war and human rights atrocities, particularly women empowering engaged in peace and justice initiatives. In New Zealand, Gulriz had successfully advocated at the Supreme Court. She was part of the team that worked to prepare New Zealand's non-governmental report to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child. In her first term as MP, Gulriz was a member of the Foreign Affairs, Trade, and Defense and Education and Workforce Select Committees. She successfully negotiated an end to New Zealand's military deployments in the Middle East, refocused the work of the Defense Force on the climate crisis, and doubled the number of refugee families reunited, as well as financial support to bring them together. Now, unfortunately, Gulriz could not join us personally, but she has extended her regards to everyone, and I will read out her question before Ellen plays her video. Is that correct?
That is correct, Minnie.
Okay, perfect. So Gulriz's question is, as a minister of the New Zealand Parliament and as a member of the Greens Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand, your party has advocated for flexibility in education and upholding of women's rights. What initiatives have you seen and policy developments do you propose that can empower women and girls' interests in digital spaces and uphold equity post-pandemic? Thanks, Ellen. Over to you.
Thanks. Thanks, Minnie. I'll just share now.
Kia ora koutou from Aotearoa, New Zealand. My name is Gulriz Garaman, and I'm an MP for the Green Party in New Zealand's House of Representatives. Digital access for women and girls, as for everyone, is an equity issue. It is increasingly essential for us in participating in democracy as well as education. In the Pacific, where New Zealand happens to lie, access to digital spaces is also a socioeconomic issue. The access for women and girls, as with all socioeconomic issues, is reduced. So, whilst in New Zealand we rely on digital access for schooling during the COVID pandemic, for example, or during other times when people can't access schooling in person, in the Pacific, this becomes more of a both limitation and also an issue of access for women and girls beyond school. So once women and girls want to enter the workforce, for example, the economy, trade, which is one of my portfolios, if our schooling hasn't included that access to the digital economy or digital spaces, that will become more and more limited. In terms of democracy, it means that journalists, for example, working in the digital sphere don't have as much access as those who do. But coming back to school itself, the very equipment of digital access becomes a socioeconomic issue. Once we have that access, there's also the issue of marginalization for girls online. So the access is something that the Green Party and New Zealand's Parliament has prioritised. But then I guess the problem that we're talking about, and also this this conference will come down to issues around abuse and intimidation of women and girls online. So my work, when I focus my portfolio on things like human rights or ethnic communities, is to look at the way that girls are excluded, not just because of physical access issues, but because of mental health. And one of the things that we talk about over and over again is the way that women and girls are targeted in online spaces when they become visible, when they share photos, when they share a political opinion, when they enter into conversations and debates. So the way that we regulate online spaces, the way that we uphold women's rights to equality in terms of that participation becomes important. What we have suggested is both legislative change to protect women and girls against gender discrimination, against abuse and violence online, but also cultural education. So the way that women and girls participate in online spaces depends on the way that the rest of their community engages in online spaces. And that does start in school. That starts with an understanding that, for example, different background women, whether that's a disabilities issue, whether it's the rainbow community, whether it's ethnic minorities, will have different ways of interacting online, different ways of being targeted, and that the space needs to be safe and inclusive for us all. So that conversation is ongoing. It's something that we want resourced, and it's something that we want active participation from women to both capture our experiences and to capture the solutions that best suit us so that we can safely engage in education, in democracy, in online spaces.
And back over to you, Minnie, for your Q&A session.
Perfect. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for playing that. It's unfortunate that Golriz couldn't be with us, but again, just similar themes coming through of support. It starts in school, it starts at a young age, and creating safe spaces for our girls and women to be able to participate in our digital spaces as well. Now, we have time for Q&A, and I will open it to the floor if anyone has any questions for our panelists. Please just raise your hand in the, or pop your question in the chat box. And yeah, does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? Feel free, safe space. Well, probably someone's still thinking of a question. I'll just read someone's introduction in the chat here. Hello, everyone. I'm Mutesi Miriam from Uganda, and I'm glad to be a part of this. Welcome, Mutesi. Awesome. And we have a question from, please apologies if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Magissa. Yep, you can go ahead. Sorry, I'm not sure if it's my internet, but can everyone hear?
No, Mogisa is not audible.
Okay, thanks, Sebastian. Mogisa, sorry, we're not able to hear what you're saying at the moment. Can we go over to Christabel?
Hi.
Go ahead with your question.
Yes, I was asking, how can we support the women and girls who are in remote areas, who have lived their lives with the notion that men are greater than them? How can we change that attitude?
Great question. Panelists, Abena, Tangihare, Diksha, anyone want to answer that? Was that question loud and clear? Yep, Abena, you can go.
Well, I think when I was previously women's officer of my student union prior to being president, and I, as I said, did a lot of work to try to actively include more women in leadership, and some of them had come from rural areas and had different perspectives than women who'd grown up in more urban areas. And I found that exposing them to other women in positions of leadership and allowing them to be inspired by those women and how they hold themselves is a really effective way to inspire people, because often people don't see themselves in positions of power until they see somebody who looks like them doing it. And when Obama was president, there was an increase in the participation of African Americans in politics. And in Australia, when Julia Gillard was prime minister, there was an increase in the participation of women in politics. And so if those women haven't had the exposure to other women in leadership positions to see how effective they can be, that would be a really effective way to actually, shift that perspective by showing them what's possible within their gender.
Awesome. Thank you, Abena, for that response. Christabel, I hope that answered your question. It was very eloquent. Anyone else has any questions, any thoughts, any feedback? Yep, Tangihare, go ahead.
Kia ora, aroha mai. My internet is being a bit slow because it is the middle of the night, and sometimes that happens after 12. So I'll leave my camera off, but I think one of the best suggestions I can give is bring them along with you if you can. Advocate for them to be in the room. One of the biggest things is that they often don't get the opportunity to be in the room. And if you can, or if you know anyone who has resources, advocate for them to go into these spaces that these women are already in and bring the information to them, bring the opportunities to them, and allow them to have space to digest that information, however long it may take. Make sure that you've got people who can support them in understanding these high-level conversations, because sometimes fundamentally, if they are not offered education, they do not have the opportunities yet to understand a lot of these conversations that we're a part of. So yeah, I'd highly suggest, if you can, to bring them along with you, and if not, share the resources that you have with them actively.
Awesome, thank you, Tangihare. I see Diksha, your hand is up. You can go.
I wanted to add in point, it was really inspiring to see young boys and young men coming up and asking how to promote girls' education. I think this is the change in mindset that we need to focus upon. We need to educate not only girls, but also boys to fight for their rights and come up and stand strong for their fellow classmates, or mothers also, sisters, daughters, everyone in their family and community at large.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely support that statement, Diksha. It's actually everyone's sort of role to play in this, right? We can't have just one part playing that part and then others not supporting. So thank you for that. Do you still want to say anything, because you still have your hand up? Do you have anything further? Nope. Okay. Abena, you want to say something, or?
Nope, just trying to have my camera not fall over.
Yep, that's all right. I see Christabel's, your hand is up again.
Yes, I was also asking, how can you support the people in the rural areas with resources? For example, we can say a young girl can look up to a big leader, but how can she become that big leader, that woman leader who succeeded in her life? Most people in rural areas, like in Kenya, have that challenge. They have that big dream, but cannot achieve it because they don't get enough resources. How can we help combat this situation?
Thank you, Christabel, for that question. And that's one of the themes that's been also coming up, that a lot of our women and girls are also in rural areas. Please, panelists, feel free to unmute yourself and respond. Cheers.
I'm just going to jump in and say thank you so much for mentioning rural communities, because I think that's a massive untapped like group of people who don't get to speak in these spaces often. As someone who was from a rural community, I grew up in a town of around about like 200 people, and the biggest thing was speaking for them at a high level until they can speak for themselves. So making sure that the topics are brought up on institutional levels, if that's a possibility, making sure that they are, you know, legislated for, making sure that they are represented within your House of Representatives, even just like local councils. I'm not quite sure how that works in other countries, unfortunately, but I do know that higher level leadership often don't hear these opinions, and they often need to be reminded actively that these communities matter and people in these communities really want a chance to speak up. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Tangi, for that. Abina, you can go, and then we'll go to Gloria.
I want to kind of add on to that point, just to say that I think for me personally, from an urban area and living in one at the moment, and being somebody who's been lucky enough to have a lot of opportunities afforded to me, into it from that angle isn't necessarily something that I contribute to, but I do think that people...
Did you put this on?
If it's on the team. So we have to prepare this.
Sorry, can we have Charity? Are you able to mute yourself? Thank you.
Sorry.
Basically, my point was that people in positions of privilege need to make sure that they're not leaving women in rural areas behind. You need to make sure that when we're policy making, when we're creating programs, when we're trying to uplift women around us, that we're not forgetting about women in rural areas, and that we're actively considering and making sure that we bring them along for the journey. I think that's really what we from this kind of side of the issue can do, is make sure that they're just not ignored and forgotten about because they're not present, and that we're actively creating those opportunities for them to move into those spaces and access those opportunities.
Yeah, I'm just sorry. You can see me just feeling the passion coming from all the panelists tonight. I love that. Equal opportunities. It's all about opportunities, creating that for our women and girls. Awesome. We will go over to Gloria. Thank you.
So I think one of the very effective ways that I also mentioned in my speech is proper statistics, when the government actually know the range in these different communities, and they can actually budget for, create laws as well as budget for the communities. And when we advocate and when we push, because we're exposed to opportunities. I come from a rural community, so I really understand where they're coming from, because once an individual is exposed to the other things that they're not exposed to, we should advocate, we should stand up for themselves and be able to make sure that proper statistics goes back to the government, so they're budgeted for, and education can come to where they stay. Yeah, so that's what I think. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gloria. I just wanted to echo that in saying, most of our population in the rural areas are unaccounted for, and that's where census comes in to play, to get those statistics, to know where funds need to go to girls and women, or disabled or rainbow communities, what have you. So yeah, data is also very important. Ladies and gentlemen, and fellow panelists, thank you for an amazing conversation that we had. Thank you for the answers, the feedback you've provided, and also preparing, just so elegant, such elegant feedback and presentations that you have provided for us tonight or day, which depends on wherever you are in the part of the world. We have, yes, the chat keeps going off. It's distracting, so I'm just going to close that off. Yeah, thank you for those who stayed in the Asia Pacific panel. Please feel free to reach out to our organizers if you want more information or want to connect with our panelists or any other, yeah, to connect to people, just to reach out to them and they will help you. I think that's all from me, and thank you very much for joining. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Minnie, for being a wonderful moderator. And thank you so much to Amanda, who has also simultaneously run the Latin American session. Both of you have done an incredible job, and we have learned so much from this process, as well as our amazing panelists. But we are now moving on to the next part of the session. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen so that you can see what that looks like. Our next part of the session, we have two sessions being run simultaneously. Breakout 1, which I'm just putting into the chat now, is also from an external link. It will be French and English. Thank you very much. It is the Africa panel. It is led by the wonderful Michelle. So if you are interested, please click the link that is in the chat now for breakout room 1 for Africa, and that is in French and English. Breakout room 2 will remain in this meeting room here, and that is for Europe. It is in English and is led by the wonderful Sandy. So we will give you 5 minutes to select which room you would like to be in. For those of you who want to be with Europe, please stay in this room. For those of you who want to go to Africa, please click the link. Thank you, everybody. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, so much. I would like to stop sharing now. And I'd like to welcome Sandy from the European Students' Union to take the digital.
Thank you very much, Ellen, and thank you very much for helping organize all of this. Welcome, everybody. My name is Sandy. I'm the Equality Coordinator at the European Students' Union. Please do let me know if there's any trouble with my connection. It should be working fine. Welcome, everybody, to this Europe panel. We have the next less than an hour to discuss some of the thematics from the CSW67 from the European perspective. And we've invited some very, very talented and very, very nice panelists. Let me see, is everyone here? Yes, I can see everyone. Okay, we are in a special situation. We heard earlier, for the ones who were there at the beginning of the session, how a big proportion of STEM researchers are men. 31% STEM researchers, only 31 of them are women. We see girls being less confident in STEM subjects, while boys are being further and further encouraged in these subjects. We see digital spaces being very hostile towards women for engaging and participating in public discourse. And we've also seen recently by the UN that if we want to reach gender equality, we're going to have to wait 300 more years if we just continue at the current pace. That is not good enough. I look forward to hearing all the very inspiring thoughts from our panelists. We have 4 with us. We have Nadja Gulestrup Christensen, who's the European Youth Delegate to the United Nations. We have Caridad Alarcon, that's a board member of the Organizing Bureau of the European Students' Union, a European School Students' Union. When you have Sara Tagliabracci from Erasmus Student Network, and then we have my dear colleague from the European Students' Union, Emily McPherson. I will start with you, Nadia. I will just read your bio quickly, and then I'll pose you a question, and then you have some time to respond. We're not in a big hurry, so I gave you a time limit of like 8 minutes. Don't worry if you go above that a little bit, if you have some interesting stuff to say. But I'll just start introducing you quickly for everyone. Nadia is the EU's youth delegate to the United Nations and has also been a Danish youth delegate for the UN for Climate and Environment. Nadia is currently chair of the Danish Youth Climate Council, providing recommendations to Denmark's Minister of Climate and Energy. She's strongly interested in climate and biodiversity and for action to keep the 1.5-degree target alive, and she remains a fierce advocate for stronger efforts to limit the extinction of species. Nadia holds a bachelor degree in natural resources with a specialization in environmental economics, and she currently studies for a master's degree in environmental economics. So Nadia, your question is, the European Union wishes to be a global frontrunner on gender equality. As the EU's youth delegate to the UN, do you see the EU being a frontrunner, and are the European Union and its member states able to push for digital inclusion of women and girls in all areas of life? Nadia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sandy, and thank you so much, everyone. I'm really honored by the opportunity of being here with you today. So I'm actually participating in CSW. So from my side, it is good morning to everyone. And really great to meet you all, because as you know, the negotiations here at the CSW is really intense right now. The second paper just came out, and it's quite interesting that you know, how the UN is pushing for getting more digital inclusion of women and girls in all areas. But even though we've spent a week here, we're still, you know, a bit far to go. But the EU is really pushing to improving this globally, as well as in EU as well. But as you know, we are not at all there yet. Only 1 in 6 ECT specialists in the EU is a woman, and I think that really says a lot about where we are in ECT specialists. That is people working with technology, and I think that's kind of, you know, scary that we don't have more women. We see ourselves as a front runner when it comes to gender equality in the EU, but we still have really a far to go when it comes to encouraging more women to study these kinds of subjects. And I'm really thrilled to hear that you already talked about the issues of STEM before, and Sandy also brought it up. And I think it's something that is important that we talk a lot more about. And maybe also just to come with a personal story on that. I used to be in STEM when I was younger. I was really interested in it. I had physics high level, chemistry high level. And you know, when all the kids in kindergarten or in primary school had to like write about their idols, I remember that all of the other children, they were writing about Rihanna or, you know, Ronaldo or people like that. And I wrote, you know, about Niels Bohr, who is a scientist from Denmark, and I thought he was the coolest man ever. I don't know if I was a bit in love with him. I was probably not. He was dead at that point, but you know, he was really my idol when I was in primary school. And I think it's kind of scary that this fascination of Niels Bohr and science it didn't disappear. I've still, you know, worked a lot with science, but it's not like my main course as I really hoped for when I was younger. And it's kind of sad that my big dream as a kid was being a quantum physics, and now I'm here in the UN doing a lot of talking. But I think some of the problems with that is also that we need to break gender stereotypes. I remember that, you know, being in a class with physics high level, it was, you know, all boys almost, and there was a lot of the ways that was, you know, the educations and the what we learned that was taught in a way that was probably more oriented towards more male people. And I think that's something that we need to change. We need to look into what are the curriculums when people are, you know, learning these subjects, and how can we teach in a way that also suits more female students. And then we also just need more role models generally in the EU, and of course also beyond. I think it's quite scary. I worked in an engineering company, and when I started, there was literally like my boss was a man, my boss was a man, and my boss was a man, and I could, you know, continue, but that would be a tongue twister saying boss so many times because it was a big company. But I think it was kind of scary that, you know, you would have so many men also being the leaders. in these kind of companies. And that is a big problem. If you look at the Fortune 500 companies, where a lot of them are tech and engineering companies, then 1 out of 10 of leaders are men and or are women, and the rest is men. And I think that's really scary. And also when I talk with role models, women who have made it to work with technology and be leaders within this, both in the EU and beyond, then they can all recognize that they have felt kind of alone in many ways. And I think that's scary, that they feel like they've also had to like do even more as a woman and to prove their gender. And I wish that the EU would push for, getting us somewhere where we don't have to prove ourselves, but where we are, only being judged by our skills. And something where we are also not only being judged by our skills is also when it comes to what we earn. And I think it's really interesting because women work in ECT, which is again technology. Muted.
Sorry, oh good. Sorry, that was just, I need everyone to be muted. Please go on.
Thank you so much. And it is complicated with these technologies, but as I was saying, then women working with technologies, they earn almost like 20% less than men do. And this is a problem in the EU and beyond, but also in other sectors more generally, where we have, according to ILO, which is the International Labor Organization, then women are also paid around 20% less than men. So it's kind of scary. We have this gender pay gap both in the EU and with technologies and also beyond that. But that is really a place where we see the EU being a front runner in some ways, as they're using technology to improve these problems, because the EU recently looked into the gender pay directive. And I think that's quite important, because it uses data and it uses technologies to break and bridge the gender pay gap. And I think that is really interesting how having technologies is not only a threat, but also something that can be part of the solution in regards to more gender equality more generally. And I think what is also interesting with this directive is that it's not only looking into creating awareness. It's, of course, it has started a lot of discussions, and that was also something I felt in my friend group. We did not used to talk about what we earn in my group of friends, but suddenly when the EU discussion started about having more transparency, then we opened up in the group and talked about what we earn at work. And I thought that was quite interesting, also because I didn't know before what my friends earned. And then when you start knowing it, then you also start to question what you earned yourself. And then you can go to your leader and say, hey, my friend or my colleague in a similar position, they get more. And that is, of course, important, because if we need to have women choosing different kinds of direction, need to maybe also do something else than do today, then we should also acknowledge that what you earn is an important perspective. So I think that is an important perspective. But generally, we need more women in STEM, and I'm so glad that you guys are talking about it, because one way to solve this is also having discussions like this today. And I would just, conclude saying that women should not only fit in the digital system, we should be empowered to create them, because if we are part of creating the systems, then we can help mitigating the gender-based violence online. We see with women who are active in the public debate being, threatened that they should be afraid or something else. There's someone who's not muted again. But yeah, when women are empowered to create digital systems, then we can be part of ensuring that we change the way the systems are today. And the systems are simply not fair when we see that when you are a woman participating in the public debate, then you get so many threats online. And that's something that I've also witnessed it personally. And I'm not even one of the people who are hit the hardest, especially women from minority backgrounds. It's insane how many threats they get when they are participating online and when they talk about gender especially. And I think that's so scary, and we need to ensure that people can feel comfortable about participating in the public debate and don't have to risk gender-based verbal abuse online. So thank you so much for inviting me to this meeting, and I'm really looking forward to hearing much more of your perspectives, and then I promise to bring it to the CSW negotiations right here in New York. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadia, and thank you for bringing stuff along for the decision makers you're with. I'll just remind everyone to remember to stay muted if you are not a speaker. And we will quickly move on. Also to say that at the end of the 4 speakers, there will be the possibility of asking a Q&A. So please feel free to write down your questions and ask them either directly through the microphone at the end, or put them in the chat. And then when everyone has spoken, I will take up some of the questions. Thank you. The next one we will go to, and it fits very well with the ending of your speech, Nadia, is Caridad Alarcón. She's a board member of the Organizing Bureau of European School Student Unions, and she graduated from high school in the 2nd year of the pandemic in 2021, a challenging time for the educational system. She's been learning via a digital system in her high school where tablets were used in the classroom. She's very much interested in social work and changes in society. That is the main reason why she chose to study social education. Most of her work in her career is based on the digital gap and its approaches in school. So, Caridad, your question is the following. Do schools have a role to play in educating young people on online safety and digital decorum? How can we make sure that young people, and especially women, feel safe enough participating in digital life without being silenced and harassed, both in their everyday digital life, but especially in young women's participation in political discourse? Please, Caridad, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me today here. It is a pleasure to speak among other fellow panelists and such amazing and inspiring women here today. I would just quickly say that, of course, education has a very much important role when it comes to educating people, young students, on online safety and digital decorum, which is something that we don't usually talk about, that it's like the social rules that we need to use online, because sometimes there is like, because we are, texting and no one sees their faces, it is easier to harass or insult someone or throw these awful messages that we tend to get on social media. And as someone that has been on these digital courses I've done from the first year to the last year of high school, I've used tablets, and all my classmates, they had access to the internet and they had access to, a tablet. And of course, teachers, first of all, weren't ready, for example, to explain how to use a tablet in a safe way when it came to sending messages or using social media while being in class, or like even using it inappropriately. So that was something that we need also to tackle when it comes to education. It is about giving the teachers the training they need, but also in the base of like education when it comes to digital use. So then of course women are in a very much vulnerable position when it comes to these uses and when it comes to this access. I'm so sorry, my brother's here. Just need 1 minute.
No worries, Caridad. I think it's gonna be quick. So we'll just give Caridad just a few seconds to be able to return. Just to be able to finish her argument.
I am so sorry. My apologies. I'm along with
No
my brother, and well,
no worries.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that, of course, women are in a much vulnerable position when it comes to, for example, social media or the access to digital devices. There is, of course, and we talk about this in my career and in my degree, that it's the I don't know exactly the words in English, but it's like women are much more likely not to access digital devices, like the women gap on the digital device. or like digital resources. Of course, schools can play a critical role in promoting digital citizenship and empowering young people, especially young women, to participate safely and effectively in digital life and political discourse. This could include offering educational resources and training on digital safety, as I said, for students and teachers. And then also the safety and media literacy, promoting positive online behavior and respectful communication, because also we've seen a very much increase on cyberbullying, and this is something that we have also tackled in OBESU. We've worked with Kids Action, and we've tackled this very much big problem on cyberbullying, and it's playing a critical role in schools these days and in young people. So we very much need to promote this citizen, like this education on citizenship in online, as we do also in person. Then of course we need to create safe spaces, and we need to promote the resources and support for students who experience these issues. And it's about tackling the issue for not to happen, but also when the problem happens, to have the resources to tackle the issues, and for the teachers to be prepared and have these protocols in schools that can much help the students or the victims who are suffering from this, especially when it comes to cyberbullying. And of course, in this, when it comes to the position of women who are very much vulnerable in these positions. Overall, I believe that it's essential for schools to prioritize digital safety and citizenship education, and to work towards creating a safe and inclusive online environment for all students. We are also, because I mentioned a lot the training of students, but also the teachers in OBESU, we are running this project called Innovation Station, as a project that works towards the education digital age and the challenges of it. So I just wanted to really wrap up on those of all the things that I have said, but it really to encourage schools to create safe environments, especially to pay attention to the girls in school and the students who identify as women in schools, for all these challenges and for this gap to be over as soon as possible. And I just wanted to say thank you once again, and that I'm very, very much sorry, but due to family issues, like I am here along with my brother who needs 100% my attention. I will now have to leave, but I am Caridad Obesu. You can search and you can drop any question you want on email or LinkedIn. Just very much thank you to everyone for listening to me.
Thank you, Caridad, and thank you for taking your time out, even though you're busy taking care of your brother. No worries, that is totally understandable. Have a lovely day, and thank you for your input and for sharing some of the things OBESU is working on. We will move on to the next speaker, Sara Tagliabracci. And Sara is 25-year-old and grew up in Follonica, small seaside town in Tuscany, Italy. She's currently pursuing a master's degree in international and diplomatic sciences at the University of Siena and works at the IES Abroad Foundation in Siena. She graduated in linguistics and cultural mediation, and during her studies, she did 2 Erasmus mobilities in Spain. I'm going to have to ask everyone, everyone to remain muted. 2 Erasmus mobilities in Spain, and the last one that has just finished at the University of Paris, one Pantheon Sorbonne. Sarah considers herself part of the Erasmus generation. She loves to travel and learn about new cultures, and she's a promoter of mobility and considers it enriching on a personal and professional level. Sarah is currently Global Mobility Coordinator of Erasmus Student Network, the biggest nonprofit student organization in Europe. And in her work, she advocates for more inclusive and accessible international mobility. So your question, Sarah, is, the Erasmus Exchange Program has a higher percentage of female students going abroad. What responsibility does the Erasmus Plus program and participating institutions have to ensure the safety of participants and avoid experiencing gender-based violence when going on exchange? Is it enough? What more can be done? Please, Sarah, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me well. I'm sorry, but I'm at the airport. Of course, multitasking is just a very important, the quality that we have as people traveling. And well, I think from my profile, you already saw that I have like these characteristics. I'm a young woman. I'm from a very far away geographical area, and I'm the first generation Erasmus because my parents didn't do a university nor all my family. So I'm just like the first person. I'm so glad to be here because I'm like, it's like a dream to be here for me. So what about our mission as ESN and what we can do in order like to promote gender equality in universities, and what is like the purpose of the European Commission? So I think that social inclusion is of course a priority of the Erasmus program. Right now, everyone is talking about it, but actually we still know that the accessibility and the data is very, very limited of the program. We know that students from less advantaged backgrounds and from underrepresented areas, for example, from mine, are not very tend to go abroad, and this is like a very bad, characteristics that it's going on right now. But we know that the people that actually go abroad, like for example, like me, actually when they come back, they actually tend to engage more in the networks in local society, and this is what I want to raise an issue about. It's true that we have a very higher percentages of female students going abroad, and I think it's usually because as women we are taught that we are very good on working under pressure, take difficult decisions, and lead on very important issues. So I think that as a young woman, what I would think that we could do, obviously, is to work more on widening the participation, on the community engagement, and on having peer-to-peer interaction. So about these three topics, I would say that we should increase the participation of course, underrepresented groups in the Erasmus Plus program, and to let more international students from different parts of the world have the access, make it more accessible for them, and also to encourage the Erasmus students, the people that went on mobility, to just come back on their local or community, and then to talk more, to have more interactions between them, and of course to increase the interaction between them. Regarding the part of the gender gap, of course, is something that I also suffered as an international student. And what I would think that we should do, we should tackle and we should work on the barriers that affect the students, about we can say the fewer opportunity students, as the Erasmus Plus program called the minorities. So as ESN, we focused on three barriers. The first one are institutional barriers connected in which the way which programs and funding schemes are built. Environmental barriers, so concerning the society and the obstacles depending on the place of origins, and the attitudinal barriers regarding the lack of support. I will stress on the lack of support, and I think that one recommendation I would give is to get more information. So of course, have more interaction between small organizations, also between them. For example, in Italy, as part of ESN, we have a very good relationship with Red Cross. So in order to go and to tackle the issue of gender-based violence, we could have more interactive sessions with them. We could get the people more to speak with them. And of course, we could get people have more guidelines, also universities, because it should be both of them, also the people from the local community, but also the people that work in the universities or in the higher education institutions should be taught to have these issues. And also, of course, I would stress on building more capacity, to encourage people to talk, to have more moments like these ones, for example, but to get like not only people like me as part of a very, very big organization, but also people from a small organization that can talk between them. So these are like my recommendations. And of course, I think we should stress more on this in order like to get the Erasmus Plus program more accessible and reaching to everyone as me. And if you want, I can write down in the chat where I took all this data because we did a very, very big research as ESN regarding the social inclusion engagement in mobility, and you can see it here. And if you need any further information, you can reach me via LinkedIn, chat, anywhere you want. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing information and for sharing the links. It sounds very, very interesting, all the work you're doing at ESN. And from one airport, we're going to move to another, to Emily, who's currently sitting in Reykjavik Airport. And Emily McPherson is a member of the Executive Committee of the European Students' Union. She's originally from the United Kingdom, but has spent most of her life in Norway. Emily received a Bachelor in Science in Sports and Exercise Science with Biological Sciences from Oxford Brookes University. She has credits from a bachelor degree in Music Business Management and is currently on leave from a master's degree in Exercise Physiology at Inland Norway University of Applied Sciences. She has been actively involved in all aspects of student life in both countries, including yes, thank you. Including sports societies and student representation at the local and national levels. Emily is a former international students officer for the National Union of Students in Norway, and her work focuses mainly on the social dimension of higher education and establishing a European Students at Risk program. So, Emily, your question is, there's a higher proportion of women entering higher education. However, they're underrepresented in the leadership positions. What role do student representatives play in changing this discrepancy to match the gender diversity of the student population? What can be done about this and who is responsible? Please, Emily, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Good afternoon, everyone from Iceland Airport. I hope it's not too noisy. I tried to find somewhere quiet. Like it's been mentioned before, women are overrepresented in higher education across Europe, and there's lots of data that shows that. And we've mentioned STEM subjects, and I myself come from a STEM background where there are huge data gaps. We don't, and up until recently, haven't really researched on women because they have a menstrual cycle, and that makes the data much harder, which means that when making like health technology, like your fitness watch, it's not made for women. And we see that in higher education in Europe, mainly women go for healthcare and education, but exactly that, we're missing women from STEM subjects and technology to create technology that reflects our needs and what we're missing out on there. So even though, like Sandy mentioned, that we are overrepresented within the higher education, we struggle to get to the leadership roles. And I think we need to look at different ways of figuring out who's the leader and who qualifies, because women often have to take time out to have children or other commitments that mean that they don't go and have the formal criteria that you need to be in the high level leadership of the university. They're also, as we've mentioned, underrepresented in government. And I think that's, like we've said before, is because of the abuse and the hate that is felt online. And we have regular women's meetings within the European Students' Union. And that is something that is lifted every time from our female representatives and also our trans friends and other rainbow folks. And this is a huge, huge issue. We should be able to participate in the public debate just like everyone else without having to receive hate message online or sexual messages just after being on the evening news. We're also 25% more likely to experience gender-based violence within our higher time and higher education. And whereas workers have rights and laws protecting them, there are currently no laws protecting students, and this is something that is a huge issue, and that's something that we as students representatives can make a difference to the policymakers to change policy around this. Another aspect that is being worked on in ESU and that we are against is online proctoring, and sitting in a Zoom room like this, for example, and being forced to have your camera on while you're studying, and you might be in your home and you might be unsafe, and you might be in a classroom with someone that has harmed you in some way. And that's really important that we find ways to avoid that happening, to ensure that we are safe in all spaces, whether they're digital or in person. Another big issue that we're working on in the European Student Union is student poverty. And we know from data that single women outside of students are more likely to face poverty living alone. And so these crises that we are facing at the moment, I believe, are hitting female students harder. And so we need to make sure that they're protected and taken care of as well, and that there are measures put in place so that the gaps don't get even bigger in society, because we're speaking to students that can't afford food, they can't afford electricity or Wi-Fi, and they're also facing that the institutions can't afford to stay open. So then they are forced online, so that we risk losing a whole generation of students. So I'm really glad that we are having these discussions here and that we're together talking about women's issues across the globe. And I really want to thank you for your time. We're strong women, and we're sticking together, and we can be the change we need to see in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thank you for the great message. We have some time left, and as I said in the beginning, we have the floor open to any questions. So you can please write in the chat, or you can just raise your hand if you have any question to the three panelists that are still left. And any question to Caridad can, of course, be directed towards her. But please feel free. I'm just going to give you a few seconds to be able to pop something in. While people are still thinking, I have a little question prepared at hand that I want to hear a little bit more about. One of them is that European countries, especially Northwestern Europe, where well, three of us here, me and two of the panelists, are from, often like to see themselves as being in the front of equality work and doing quality. And I just want to know, this belief that we are great at doing this already, is that holding us back from recognizing and resolving the issues that actually exist? And what can we do about it? And please, any of the three panelists, feel free to raise your hand and answer. Nadja, you go first.
Yes, thank you so much, and really interesting question. And also, you know, Denmark is a good example where I'm from. It was a country that used to be doing quite good, and they are still relatively good, but you know, going down on all the international list on, you know, how good they are in regards to gender equality. And I think it's really sad, because when it comes to gender equality, then one of the most basic things is to acknowledge that we have a problem. And if we are not even there in Denmark and in a lot of the Northwestern European countries, then I'm quite sad about that. And I think something that is also not making it any better is a lot of polarization that we see in regards to gender equality, where we see that some people are, you know, kind of thinking that feminists, they are all extreme and all that. And I think it's kind of problematic when we see it also as a fight between genders. And I think that is some of the things that are making it even worse when we have those kind of perspectives. And I think something that is important is that we get especially men on board. Men should be seen as allies when it comes to gender equality, because we need each other, and getting more gender equality for women is also an advantage for men, because they would get, you know, more time with their children and a lot of other things. And like, you know, if you're a man, like, how would you mind that your girlfriend earns money if you are in that kind of relationship? You know, all those kind of things is things that we should focus on. And the reason why I brought up the perspective of seeing men as an ally is that they don't always want to be an ally, and I think that's something that we need to break. And there's also a lot of like toxic masculinity in general, and I don't even like that word that much anyway, but I think we need to break those stereotypes and also have a more diverse approach to how gender is. And I think in many ways in this part of Europe, we are focused too much on, you know, do we have equal opportunity to education and those kind of things, and focused a bit too little on, you know, the cultural parts of education. And I think that is really problematic when it comes to ensuring that we all not only have the same opportunities, but that we are all actually equal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nadia. Emily, please go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, Nadia said it brilliantly, and you know, I live in Norway as well, so I have much the same experience that, you know, we need to start talking about like the differences, and that there are still fights that need to be happening, things that need to change, even in our countries that seem and feel like they're doing well at it. And I just want to like make a little comment on like so like we saw Caridad, who had to leave, who is doing unpaid care work, and like everyone has good intentions of like, you know, when they have children, or maybe they have responsibility for other members of their family or friends, and it often still falls on women, even though you go into that and having the intention of being an equal caregiver, it often still ends up being a women's role, and it's recognizing that going on in the home as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please,
sorry.
Sarah. No, please go ahead. I was going to invite you.
Something, yeah, about like not actually this, because of course it's not like from where I'm from, but I can talk about like my journey, about how it was different from the place where I was born till now, that now I'm in a very, I think in a very privileged group. I have these opportunities of talking with a lot of people. Many of them are very powerful, like women, like they have position of power. It seems that now we don't have to fight for our rights because everything seems good. But then when talking and when we're talking with people, when going to events maybe, and having to deal with the proper things that are going on, you still see that there are a lot of problems in like the basics. So I think we should more tackle this problem on like the basic side. I know that it's very important that MEPs and all important people that have position of power tackle these topics about gender-based violence and everything, but still I think we should go more in depth with local communities, talk more with people, and get this thought about, okay, now you have the equality, now everything seems good. It is not true, because still every time when I'm in a conference, people talk with me, but always address me like saying, oh, hi, you are the young lady. And I'm like, yes, I'm the young lady, but I have this position. I'm here because I am currently having this position. So we should, focus more on also like the communication we have between people and try to tackle this topic on the roots. This is what I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think it's a very important point about especially about how rights, both women and LGBTQ plus rights, like the general consensus for a long time was history was just progressing, like more progressive societies, everything was getting better and better. And it was only in dystopian novels we saw rights being taken away and gender-based violence being like legally allowed, basically like in The Handmaid's Tale. And now we're starting to see many of these rights being diminished or being challenged. Basic rights for women to control their own body, and like rights about choosing your own gender identity and so on. And how do you see we have to approach this serious issue going on, especially also like in Europe and the West in general? How can we stop this very negative development going on? Please go, Nadja.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think there's some of the discussions that are currently taking place online that we should try to get to have physically. I think that we often see that the online space can be a really ugly mirror of the true reality, where people become an even better version of themselves when they are, online, because they don't see the people who are, behind the screens. And that is really a concern that I have in this regards. And I think that is something that we as people who see ourselves as involved in gender equality, that we should try to talk with people that might not be ideally involved in gender equality like ourselves. So when we are at a family party or something like that, then instead of sitting on your phone and messages with your friends, which I would often do, then try to talk with your uncle who might be a bit strange, which my uncle is. And I think that is, don't tell him, but I think doing things like that is really something that can make a change. And also something that we have seen in other contexts. We had a migrant woman who invented something called dialogue coffee in Denmark, and I thought that was really beautiful, because she tried to deal with the hatred that she received from being a minority by meeting up with people who have written something insane to her online, and then drinking a coffee with them, or actually tea. She didn't like coffee. I don't know why you would invent a word on coffee if you don't like coffee, but anyway, she would do that and then ask, what do you mean when you say that I should, and then insert really bad sentence. And then when you had a discussion and asked people questions, then they started to, rationalize and maybe also question themselves and say, I didn't mean it like that way, or it was a really bad joke or something like that. And I think that's something that we need to do. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do more also on a structural level. I don't want to be that kind of person. I think we should also get, Facebook and a lot of the big multimedia companies to take more responsibility. They should remove hate speech in many ways. I think, hiding between or behind the freedom of speech argument is really sad, because, you shouldn't have the freedom to be, say like threats, like that's not illegal anyway. So that is something that we need to do. And that's good that we have people like Margrethe Vestager, the commissioner, who is like one of my big role models, not only as poor, now it's also her, who I really see as a strong woman. And she's really, taking lead and like trying to push some of the big companies to do more in multiple regards. And I think that is something that we need more of. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Emily and Sarah, do you have anything you want to add? No? Okay. I will. I think we have time for one question more. Does anyone from the audience want to pose a question? Please feel free just to raise your hand and pose the question if you have anything. I'll give you 3 seconds to raise your hand. All right, then I'll just try to formulate one last question to you. And my question is about when we're talking about women's rights, how do we include the entire intersectional part of it? And also, how do we question the existence of the gender binary without losing out on women's issues, like the problems that are actually affecting women, which of course are real, but how do we also question the binary when all of the data we collect is this is women, this is men, and like there's so much invisibility about anyone who doesn't fit into these two gender categories? How do we maintain focus on women and raise awareness on this other thing? Do you have any thoughts on this question? Sarah, please. Sarah, please.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, sorry. Well, first I have to say that this is a very, very difficult question. But what I think is the most problematic thing we have right now is that we are putting everyone in just one side of the ideal world. Like we put men and then women and all the people that feel that they are non-binary and LGBTQI plus people, like, you know, we just put all of them like in, as if it was like one sphere of the planet. And I think this doesn't match actually what are the needs of the people, because people have to be heard, have to be listened. And at the same time, for example, my situation, for example, I'm a woman, but I'm not from a very I'm from a rural community, so I'm not from a big city, and this already like makes a change. So I think, of course, also like the people that feel themselves they are non-binary, of course, they maybe have to struggle more, because still people have to acknowledge this fact that they are non-binary, and more they also have like, you know, to make for them possible that they have all the opportunities that all the other people have, like to make it more accessible for everyone. So I think the most difficult thing right now is just like to divide this this topic, like the topic of violence, dividing it into like different people. And because everyone, of course, we are all people, we are all humans, but of course we have different perceptions, we have different realities, and I think we should more we should like model our ideas and regarding respect to the interaction we have with these people.
Thank you, Sarah. Emily, please.
Well, Sandy, thanks for a big question. I wish like I had a good answer to this. I think we could have solved a lot of our work if we did. I think first and foremost, you know, a huge group of this is women. It's a huge percentage of the population, and you have all those other intersections, whether you're from a migrant background or whether you're disabled, and all of these things, and you need to make sure and take care of them. And within this, also make sure that non-binary people do feel included, trans people feel included. You know, talk to them and figure out, okay, how can we figure out this together? Because we're all in it together. Like Nadia was talking about allyship. I think like a lot of the key is like, you know, we need to be good allies and figure out a way of, you know, if we need data, getting better data, using all these experts we have. I don't necessarily have the answer, but I think like talking to each other and figuring it out without making sure that the responsibility is on those affected groups, but make sure that we are speaking on their behalf, but not speaking for them, if that makes sense, and trying to find a way to solve this together. Thank you, because we are, like it's mentioned by Sarah, we are humans, and making sure like our basic human rights are taken care of first and foremost.
Thank you. I know, Nadia, you're running to a session. Do you have any last comment? Then feel free to add it.
Yeah, sure. So maybe just briefly to say, I think, you know, seeing that there are some people who want to make this a challenge. I don't know if you all follow the discussions from J.K. Rowling, where I think that could be really difficult and really dangerous if people start seeing, you know, us as, you know, someone who should keep, you know, almost like compete about the attention. We should be able to solve multiple problems at the same time to ensure that we are all there. And I think especially us who are not from a minority in that regard needs to be more inclusive in many ways. I think there are so many problems also with the way that we speak and the way that we behave, where we have a really binary world without it actually making sense. Like, why do we need to say he or she when describing something? Why can't we not just say they, or, you know, find another word? Like trying to question some of the things like that. And also ensuring that there are toilets that are, you know, not binary, and all those things is not something that harms me as a woman or anything like that. Like, I don't care. So if it's something that makes a change for someone else, then, this is something we should do. So I think we should look at society as a whole, our language, our toilets, and all the things in between, and ensure that it is inclusive to all. And I think we should also remember to question ourselves on how we do and how we say things, and try to change that. And of course, we're not perfect. And I think we should also acknowledge that in many ways. There are probably often where I've said he, and then I should have said they. And then, as long as you have the right intentions and you say sorry afterwards, then, that is okay. So, try to do good, but then also, accept that this is a journey and that we have started as a society and we're still not there. Thank you so much, and really glad that I got the opportunity to be here with you today. I have to run to a CSW event, but it was amazing being here with all of you, and I really hope that you will all have an amazing day. And I hope to potentially see you out in the real world or in the physical space, because that is also something that we need. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nadia, and please enjoy the rest of CSW. And I think it's a very nice wording to end this panel discussion on. So I'd just like to thank you all. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Sarah. And of course, also thank you to Caridad. And a huge thank you to GSF and Ellen for organizing this with us. There's a lot of very fine points to be made, and there's so much work to be done. And we have to do better. To make sure that everyone that we actually have equality and social justice as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if Ellen, you want to take over for the final part, or how it's gonna go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sandy, for a fantastic presentation, and to all of the wonderful panelists. That was incredibly insightful. We really appreciate the time and energy that you put into this space, and can see the passion that you're working with, which is an absolute thrill. So thank you so much. Before we go to the closing statement, I'll quickly check with my colleague Sebastian. Are we all good to go with the translators? Just give me a thumbs up or a yes.
I'm trying to switch it back on, if you can give me a few seconds.
Sure thing.